Hello everyone, welcome back. I've got a book haul for you today, and these are books that I have bought over the past couple of weeks. None of them were expensive. I don't buy expensive books. I buy pretty much exclusively used books. Couldn't tell you the last time I bought a brand new book. And I was going to mix these into fiction and nonfiction, but I decided not to. We'll just mix them all up and see how it comes out. So the first book is Philip Caputo's Horn of Africa. I got this a couple of days ago. I just thought it looked really interesting. And I've read several of Caputo's nonfiction books, but I've never read one of his novels or anything like that. So I kind of have a mixed view of his nonfiction. I like it to an extent. It's not the best nonfiction I've ever read. It's always interesting though. Caputo himself is an interesting guy. He was an officer during the Vietnam War. I think he was a lieutenant, and he later on was a reporter, and I believe he was captured and held captive for some time by some sort of revolutionaries. I don't remember exactly. I have that book. I've been meaning to read it for quite some time, so I don't know the exact situation around that. But I have a couple of his novels. I've never read them, but this one looked really interesting, and I was thinking that this is sort of more my kind of thing than would be his other novels that I have. So maybe I will start with this one and see how much I like it. I don't know. The next came from the same day, the same store. This is an anthology. This is Revelations. So this is an interesting concept. These are a bunch of stories written by, I guess, horror writers and dark fantasy writers, decade by decade through the 20th century, and up to Y2K, I guess. So this is from 1997, and the authors in this: Joe Lansdale, David Morrell, F. Paul Wilson, Poppy Z. Bright, Krista Faust, Charles Grant, Whitley Streiber, Elizabeth Massie, Richard Christian Matheson, David J. Sho, Craig Spector, Ramsey Campbell, and Clive Barker. So I've read works by most of those authors, except for, I don't know if I've ever read anything by Krista Faust or David J. Sho. Craig Spector sounds really familiar. Was Craig Spector one of the splatterpunk authors? I may be completely wrong about that. I'm not a big fan of splatterpunk at all. The next is by Edmund Wilson. This is Upstate, Records and Recollections of Northern New York, and I guess this is diary entries and that sort of thing from Edmund Wilson, a reflection on his family and the people he knew. This was only 99 cents, and it seemed really interesting. I sort of thought it was a travelogue when I got it, but it's more of a diary, letters, and that sort of thing. But I'm interested anyway. I've never read anything by Edmund Wilson, except for, I think, some short essays, but I don't remember any off the top of my head. Now, the next I got, because it was there, and because I've never read this, even though I have read his other big work and I didn't like it, and it is Butcher's Crossing by John Williams, but I've never seen a copy of this in the wild for $2, and so I just thought, I'll just take a chance on it, because for all I know, I may not have liked Stoner at all. Don't get me wrong, I thought it was written well. I thought that was all up to par, but the story itself about a guy who never seems to take any, he's never proactive in his life, right? He just sort of takes the easiest course. I don't know, I didn't like it. I see why people like it. I didn't care for it. I might like this. This is about buffalo hunters in the Old West. I imagine this will be pretty dirty and grisly. And who knows, I might like this better. It's worth a shot, $2. The next was, I sort of bought this for Garb August. I haven't made any Garb August plans yet, and that's why I haven't released a Garb August video or anything like that. There are several events going on this month, and I just haven't committed to any of them really yet. I'm kind of not feeling events right now, although there are a couple I'll probably take part in this month. Anyway, this is the novelization of Independence Day by Dean Devlin and Roland Emerich and Stephen Molstead. And it's been a long time since I've seen Independence Day. I always liked that movie. I don't know if I would like it now that I'm an adult, but I just thought that this would be an interesting read either way, so why not? The next book is Photo History of the War in Iraq. So this is from 2003. There are no words in this. This is entirely pictures. My aunt was in the army, and she served in Iraq. She was in, if I remember right, Tikrit and Mosul, and she would have been in Iraq around the time that this book was published. And I remember when I was a kid, I watched the invasion of Iraq on CNN, which is such a strange thing. I would come home and it would just be on all the channels. And, you know, there was that famous footage, always footage of like the tracers over Baghdad and that sort of thing. I could probably show you some of the pictures. These are taken from photojournalists, from all sorts of sources, from the television. There are a lot of photos that I couldn't show you, but I think it's important to bear witness to this sort of thing, right? And so I wanted to look back on this as an adult. See it from that perspective. And like I said, I'm not showing you a lot of this book, so it is not all gung-ho. It's very in your face, and some of these are very shocking and very unpleasant. But like I said, I think it's important to bear witness to that sort of thing. The next two books are by Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn. I showed these in one of my recent videos, but I'll show them again here. So volume 1 and 2 of the Gulag Archipelago, and there's a third volume out there somewhere. And these are translations by, I believe, by Thomas J. Whitney, but they don't say that anywhere. You have to actually open the book, which is kind of odd. Most translated works these days tell you the author on the outside. These are, of course, about the gulags in the Soviet Union, I guess the NKVD and the KGB, and the, I guess, show trials, the purges, all that sort of thing. Just the oppression of the Stalinist government and the Soviet government. So the next book is Shosha by Isaac Bashevis Singer. I just talked about Isaac Bashevis Singer because I have a big collection of his short stories that I need to get to. And I saw this. I've never seen this book before, and it seemed more interesting to me than some of his other novels that I've come across. A lot of his novels seem to be about middle-aged men who have affairs with their secretaries, and I just don't care. Don't care at all, not even vaguely. Whereas this seems like a book that would be really interesting and sad while you're reading it, but I think it would be a book that you would appreciate having read. It's about a man who, he's in Poland around the time that the Nazis are invading Poland, and he is trying to make up his mind whether to stay or go, and he is in love with the girl next door, basically, and he can go, but she can't, and so I think that would probably be devastating, but worth reading in the end. The next is one I was kind of surprised to see. This is The Serpent and the Rainbow by Wade Davis, and this is a study of Haitian voodoo zombies, like an actual study into it by a college professor, an ethnobotanist. I don't know if he was a college professor, but he was an ethnobotanist. There was a movie made of this by with Bill Pullman long time ago. I saw the movie. I doubt that these two things have much in common because this is a study, whereas that was a zombie movie. I don't know. I think it would be interesting to read. It was $3, and so let's give it a shot, right? The next is kind of interesting. I like these architecture books. This is The Pelican History of Art. Architecture, 19th and 20th Centuries by Henry Russell Hitchcock. And this is really interesting. I've seen some of these houses before. My chair is very squeaky today for some reason. No matter how many times I grease it, it never seems to stop squeaking. So, as you may imagine, it is just full of pictures of houses and civic buildings and opera houses and descriptions of them and who pioneered these architectural forms and that sort of thing. So I really like architectural books. They're generally really expensive, so I don't have a lot of them. But whenever I find them cheap, I just about always get them. Just is not very often actually. So so the next is my old nemesis, Mr. Andrew A. Rooney. This is word for word. I was really surprised to come across this. There are not too many collections of his that I don't have or that I haven't read, and I just really did not expect to see this. Uh, I read one of his books recently. It was a collection of his letters, and I have been kind of burned out on Andy Rooney, to be honest. But I keep buying them because I do, to some extent, find myself identifying with him. He is kind of like a get off my lawn guy. I mean, look at that. He looks like he's about to tell the photographer that his hair is too long and he needs a haircut. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I'm probably going to read all of Andy Rooney's books, right? But I don't know why, because I usually go into them overjoyed, and then as it goes on, I just am thinking like, can we please be done with this? Like, there's only so much I can take of listening to a man like complain about having to go to his summer house and, how he's annoyed that he has to buy new socks. And I don't know. He did more than that. Okay, it's not just that, but it does get kind of tedious after a while. Uh, the next is by Stephen Graham Jones. This is The Only Good Indians. I've heard a lot of people talk about this. I have never read, well, I take that back. I read one full-length work by Stephen Graham Jones, but mostly I've read his short stories and only here and there when they pop up in anthologies and that sort of thing. The first time I ever encountered a story by Stephen Graham Jones was in, I want to say, The Best New Horror 2009, maybe 2008, and I cannot for the life of me remember what that was about. I want to say it was about werewolves on motorcycles. I don't know if that's actually what that story was about. It's been a long time ago. I read his book, Mapping the Interior, and I didn't understand what that book was about. I want to reread that, but I don't think I have it anymore because I didn't understand it at all the first time I read it. This seems like it would be something I would enjoy. I've I've heard people talk about it, and some people seem to really like it, and some people don't. Uh, the next is A Stricken Field by Martha Gellhorn. Never read anything by Martha Gellhorn, so this will be a first, unless I've read maybe some of her essays or something like that in anthologies. This is about, I guess she went to Prague before the Nazi invasion, and then she went back afterwards and talked to people there. Or maybe she just talked to refugees from Prague. I'm not really sure. So the next is a copy of Dracula by Bram Stoker. And I haven't had a copy of Dracula in a long time. I read this a long time ago, and I kind of liked the castle there, and I like these Dover editions. And I have been contemplating rereading Dracula, but I don't know when I will get around to that. I didn't really like it the first time I read it. I think I was just too young or something, and it wasn't my cup of tea. Uh, the next is The Occult, A History by Colin Wilson. And so I don't know a whole lot about Colin Wilson. I read like a Wikipedia entry about him quite some time ago, and I remember that he was a pretty strange guy, to say the least. And he was a true believer in occult practices like ESP and stuff like that. And I don't know. I was just kind of interested in seeing what his thoughts on these things were. Like I'm very aware that he had a bias towards these things. Like he believed in them. And I just thought that this would kind of be very different from what I usually read. And maybe interesting. I don't know. Uh, I haven't read a book about this sort of thing. I read a book about black magic when I was in high school. It wasn't like how to do black magic. It was an actual book that looked back on like the history of magic and where it all came from and what it was all about and maybe what the reality was as opposed to the fiction, which was really interesting. I can't remember who that was by off the top of my head. Whereas, like I said, Colin Wilson was a believer. So as far as I remember, he was a believer. And like I said, I just think that this would be an interesting thing, very different from what I usually read. Sometimes I like to read things that are very different from what I normally read, just to keep myself from getting in a rut. The next kind of goes along with the Gulag Archipelago. It's by a different author, but it is The Harvest of Sorrow by Robert Conquest. And this is about basically the Stalinist enforced famine of Ukraine in the 1930s. And so, as you may imagine, this will be a very unpleasant read. But I think it will be very interesting, and it's about something I really don't know anything about except for I have read accounts by like Westerners who went there and saw it, and the different, some of them were shown because they had to go with Soviet guides, right? And so some of them just saw how great everything was because that's how they wanted them to see it. And then some people were able, either by accident or by snooping around, to see the truth. And so I don't remember, but many people died in this time of starvation, and it was on purpose, right? And I don't really know a whole lot about it, but that book, I thought about buying that book one day, and like I looked over it and I thought I should get this, and I didn't buy it. And then I thought about it. I thought about it for like a week, and I went back, and I was really happy that it was there. Uh, that's The Harvest of Sorrow. Whereas I just found this one. This is by John Toland. This is the last book on the pile, actually. This is In Mortal Kombat, Korea, 1950 to 1953. So this is a history of, I'm guessing, the U.S. military in Korea. I'm not sure if it will have a focus on the Army or the Marines or what, or if it's just all together. I don't think that I've ever actually read a book by John Toland, although I have had books by John Toland for many years. Uh, I know that I have had a copy of No Man's Land since I was 12 years old. It's right over there somewhere. And I've always been meaning to read it, and I've just never gotten around to it. I have his 2-volume set of The Rising Sun. And a while back, I read a book about the Korean War. It was a very situational book. It was about a British unit in Korea. And someone had asked me if I could give any more recommendations about the Korean War, and the answer was no, because that was the only book I had ever read about it. So now I have this one, and I have another one. And anyway, that is the whole of our book haul today. And this has gone on for longer than I wanted it to, but that's most of my videos. It's all of my videos, if I'm going to be honest. I had planned to make the second part of my reading wrap up today, but after yesterday's fiasco, and it was kind of a fiasco, the finished product was 24 minutes long. The whole video was it was almost 50 minutes long. I just kept messing up and messing up, so I gave myself a rest today. I kept messing up while I'm doing this one. I guess when you take about 2 weeks off of making videos, you get a little bit rusty. And anyway, I want to thank you very much for joining me today. If you've read any of these, if you have any interest in any of these, I would love to hear about it. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.